Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The night was cold, and the city was darker than usual. Two young alien girls walked slowly along the broken streets, their feet bare against the sharp stones. Their clothes were torn, their stomachs empty, and their eyes carried only fear. The tall buildings above them were silent, like dead giants watching them suffer. The world around them did not care if they lived or died. The older sister held the younger one's hand tightly. She whispered, "Don't be afraid, I am with you." But her voice shook, and even she did not believe her own words. They had no home, no clothes, no food, no hope, only each other. And that was the last thing they could hold on to. Shadows moved in the alleys. Creatures with hungry eyes stared at them, waiting for weakness. The sisters walked faster, their hearts racing. The younger one looked up and whispered, "Why is the world so cruel to us?" The older one had no answer. She only pulled her close and said, "Keep walking." The city smelled of smoke and rot. The lights of the market were far away, but the market was not a place of safety. There, people laughed at them, threw stones at them. Beggar girls, they called them. Some even tried to drag them into the shadows for worse. So the sisters stayed away, choosing the empty streets instead. Even if it meant hunger, the younger one's legs shook and she fell to her knees. "I cannot walk anymore," she whispered. The older sister knelt beside her, holding her tightly. "Please, get up if we stop here. The shadows will eat us," she begged. Her eyes looked around the dark corners, where whispers grew louder. The night was not safe, not for two weak alien girls. Far away, they heard footsteps, different from the whispers, heavier, stronger. The sisters froze, their breath sharp and shallow. The sound came closer, echoing between the dead buildings. The older one stood in front of her sister, ready to fight even if she had no strength. Her body shook, but her will was strong. She would never let anyone harm her sister. Out of the darkness, a figure appeared. It was not like the other creatures, not like the hunters. It was tall, covered in strange clothing, with steady eyes that glowed in the faint light. It was a human. The sisters had heard stories about humans. Some said they were cruel, some said they were kind. But stories meant nothing in the face of danger. The human stopped and looked at them. His eyes moved from the older sister to the younger one. He saw the hunger, the fear, the pain in their faces. For a long moment, no one moved. The sisters expected him to laugh, to turn away, or to hurt them like all the others. But instead, he took off his coat and slowly placed it on the ground. He pushed it toward them and said in a calm voice, "Both of you, take this." The girls did not move. The older sister narrowed her eyes. Protecting the younger one, she whispered, "Why are you helping us?" The human looked at her, his voice deep but soft. "Because no one else will," he said. Simple words, but they carried a weight the sisters had never heard before. The younger one reached out, her small fingers touching the warm coat. Tears filled her eyes, for the first time not of pain but of relief. The older sister still hesitated, fear battling against hope. Could a human truly care about two poor alien girls? Or was this just another trick? Behind them, shadows began to gather again. The whispers grew louder, closer. The human stepped forward, standing between the sisters and the danger. His hand rested on something hidden under his jacket, a weapon. Perhaps, but the sisters did not know. They only saw that his body stood like a wall before them, and for the first time in their lives, someone else was ready to fight for them. The older sister finally lifted her sister onto her feet. She pulled the coat around both of them. The warmth of the fabric felt like a miracle. Her eyes locked with the human's eyes. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice breaking. The man gave a small smile, his face half hidden by the shadows. "Someone who says this," he answered slowly. "Both of you, come with me." The night was still dark, the streets still full of danger. But in that single moment, hope was born. Hope that maybe, just maybe, the sisters had found a reason to live again, and the human, for reasons they did not yet know, had chosen to walk into the darkness with them. The shadows around them hissed and retreated, as if afraid of the strange light burning in his eyes. The story of two lost alien girls and the human who offered them a home had just begun. The two alien sisters followed the human through the dark streets. Their steps were slow, uncertain, and full of fear. The coat he had given them felt warm, but their hearts were still cold. They did not trust easily, not after all the pain they had faced. The older sister walked close behind him, holding the younger one's hand tightly. She whispered, "Stay close to me, don't let go." Younger nodded, but her eyes kept staring at the man's back. Who was he? Why did he care? Humans never cared for people like them. At least, that was what they had always been told. The man's name was Daniel. Though he did not speak it yet, he moved with calm steps, not fast, not slow. He walked as if he knew where every danger hid. Sometimes he would stop suddenly, looking into the shadows. His hand touched the weapon under his jacket. Only when he felt safe again, he continued forward. The sisters whispered between themselves, "Should we trust him?" The younger asked. The older replied, "I don't know, but for now, he's the only one who has given us something without asking for anything back." Still, her voice was hard, filled with suspicion. Life had taught her that kindness always came with a hidden price. At last, Daniel stopped in front of an old, broken building. The walls were cracked, the windows shattered, but it was quiet, away from the busy markets and the cruel eyes of the city. He pushed open a heavy door and motioned them inside. The sisters hesitated, but then stepped in. The air smelled of dust and metal, but it was warmer than the streets. There was a small fire burning in the corner. Old blankets, a wooden table, and two metal chairs. It was not a home, but compared to the freezing streets, it felt like one. Daniel spoke at last, his voice calm but strong. "You are safe here for tonight," he said. The sisters looked at each other, surprised by his words. Safe, was that even possible for them? He set down a small bag he carried, opening it slowly. Inside were pieces of bread, dried meat, and a bottle of clean water. The smell of food made the sisters' stomachs twist with hunger. The younger one almost stepped forward, but the older held her back. Her eyes narrowed. "Why? Why give us this?" she demanded. Daniel looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Because I can," he answered simply. The older sister frowned. "That is not an answer." He sighed and sat on the chair, his voice lower now. "I have seen too many left to die on the streets, too many children no one cared for." His eyes hardened as if remembering something painful. "I will not walk away this time." His words carried a weight the sisters did not understand fully, but they felt a strange pull, a strange warmth in his tone. The younger one stepped forward shyly and took a piece of bread. She ate quickly, her eyes filling with tears as she whispered, "Thank you." The older sister slowly sat down beside her, still watching Daniel closely. Her body was tense, ready to defend, but deep inside, a spark of trust began to grow. As they ate, Daniel asked softly, "What are your names?" The younger answered first. "Lyra," she said with a small smile. The older hesitated, then spoke. "My name is Kayla." Daniel nodded. "Good, Lyra and Kayla," he repeated. As if fixing their names in his memory, silence filled the room. For a moment, broken only by the crackling fire. Then Lyra, curious, asked, "What is your name?" Daniel's lips curved into a small smile. "Daniel," he said. The name felt strange to them, but also strong. It was the first human name they had spoken without fear. But the moment of peace did not last long. From outside came a sound, faint but sharp, a rock hitting the wall, followed by a low laugh. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He stood up quickly. He looked at the sisters and whispered firmly, "Stay here." He moved to the door, opening it slightly. In the darkness outside, shadows shifted, voices whispered. The same hunters who had followed the sisters earlier were searching there. Cruel voices carried across the night. Two alien brats, Where did they go? Someone must have taken them. Daniel closed the door quietly, his jaw tight. He looked at Kayla and Lyra, their faces pale with terror. They are looking for you, he said, his voice calm but serious. Kayla stood, anger and fear mixing in her eyes. They will never stop. They always hunt us, she whispered. Daniel placed his hand on her shoulder, steady and strong. Then let them come, he said. I will not let them touch you. Kayla froze, staring at him. Never in her life had anyone spoken those words. For her and her sister, her heart pounded, unsure whether to believe or doubt. But when she looked into Daniel's eyes, she saw something she had never seen before. A human who was not afraid. A human who was ready to fight for them. The night outside grew darker. The whispers of hunters moved closer. Inside the broken building, 3 strangers sat together. 2 alien sisters who had lost everything, and 1 human who had given them warmth, food, and hope. The storm was only beginning, but already a bond had started to grow, a bond that neither the shadows nor the hunters could break easily. For the first time, Kayla whispered softly, almost to herself, Maybe he truly is different. And Lyra, with a piece of bread still in her hand, smiled weakly and said, He is not just different. He is our only chance. The fire in the corner burned low, sending shadows crawling across the cracked walls. Kayla sat close to her younger sister, keeping Lyra wrapped inside the human's coat. Though the warmth of the flames touched her skin, her heart remained cold with worry. Daniel sat quietly across from them, his eyes sharp, listening to every sound outside. The night was heavy, and danger was never far in this city. Lyra leaned against her sister's shoulder, her small voice breaking the silence. Is it safe here, Kayla? She whispered. Kayla stroked her hair gently, her eyes never leaving Daniel. For tonight, maybe, she answered, though her tone carried doubt. Daniel's gaze met hers, and he spoke firmly. It is safer here than out there, I promise you. His words were strong, but Kayla's heart still questioned him. All her life, she had been betrayed, laughed at, hunted. How could a single human be different? Yet as she looked at him, the way he sat ready, alert, prepared to protect, something deep inside her began to shift. It was not trust yet, but it was the beginning of it. Daniel stood and moved to the bag he had brought. From it, he pulled another blanket and handed it to Kayla. You should rest, he said. Both of you. Kayla frowned, suspicion sharp in her voice. And you? What about you? Daniel shrugged lightly, his expression calm. I'll keep watch, he replied. It's what I'm used to. The sisters shared a glance. They did not understand this man. Humans were supposed to be selfish, cruel, always taking, never giving. But here was one who gave food, warmth, and safety without asking anything back. It felt impossible, yet it was real. Slowly, Kayla laid down beside her sister. She pulled the blanket over them. Lyra clung to her tightly, whispering, I don't want him to leave us, Kayla. Kayla hesitated, her throat tight. We don't know him, she whispered back. But then she glanced at Daniel again, sitting in silence by the fire, and for the first time in years, she allowed her eyes to close. The night passed slowly, filled with distant sounds of the city. At dawn, Kayla woke to find Daniel still awake, still guarding, his eyes red with exhaustion, but his posture strong. He had not slept a moment. Kayla's heart stirred with something unfamiliar respect. Daniel looked at her as she sat up. You should eat again before we move, he said, offering her bread. Kayla hesitated, but then took it, breaking it in half and sharing it with Lyra. Her eyes stayed on him as she chewed. This human was not like the rest, she thought, but the fear of betrayal never left her mind completely. Later, Daniel led them outside. The morning sun revealed more of the broken city. Ruins, smoke, and broken machines lined the streets. Lyra's small hand clung to Kayla's tightly as they walked. Daniel guided them down hidden paths, avoiding the busy market. He seemed to know every secret corner, every shadowed alley. The sisters wondered if he had lived here long, but neither dared to ask at last. He brought them to another place, an abandoned workshop. Rust covered the walls. Broken tools lay scattered. But inside, there was space, protection, and silence. "This will be your shelter," Daniel said, his voice steady. The sisters looked around in awe for them. Even broken walls felt like a palace compared to the streets. Lyra smiled shyly. "It feels warm here," she said. Daniel gave a small nod. "It's not much, but it's safe." Kala studied him closely. Her mind whispered, "Why is he doing this?" Every good thing in their lives had always turned into pain. She could not let her guard fall completely. That night, as they settled in the new shelter, strange sounds echoed outside, metal footsteps, cruel laughter. Kala froze, pulling Lyra close. Daniel stood immediately, weapon in hand. "Stay quiet," he ordered softly. Through the broken walls, shadows moved outside, voices whispered, "They are here." The alien girls. "Find them." Kayla's heart thundered, her body shaking. Lyra clutched her tightly, eyes wide with terror. Daniel moved silently to the door, pressing his ear against it. The hunters were near, searching. Kayla wanted to scream, wanted to run, but Daniel turned to her, his eyes firm. "Do not move. Do not make a sound," he said. His calm voice steadied her for a moment. The sisters crouched in the corner, holding each other. Every sound outside grew louder, closer. Boots scraping, whispers echoing. The hunters were circling like wolves then. Suddenly, the voices faded. Footsteps moved away. Minutes felt like hours until silence returned. Daniel lowered his weapon, his eyes still cold and sharp. "They didn't see us," he whispered. Kayla let out a shaky breath, hugging Lyra tightly. But inside, fear still burned. How long could they hide? As the firelight flickered against the walls, Kayla looked at Daniel and asked in a trembling voice, "Why risk yourself for us? Why not give us to them and save yourself?" Daniel's jaw tightened, his voice low but filled with iron. "Because I don't abandon those who need me," he said, simple words. But to Kayla and Lyra, they felt heavier than gold. That night, the sisters lay close together again. But this time, a fragile hope had taken root in their hearts. They were still hunted, still hated, still lost. Yet for the first time, they were not alone. A human stood between them and the darkness. And though Kayla's fear whispered to never trust, another voice, quiet but growing, whispered something else. Maybe this human truly means what he says. The night was quiet inside the broken workshop, but the silence outside was dangerous. Kayla lay awake, her arms wrapped protectively around Lyra. The younger girl slept soundly, her small breaths soft against Kayla's chest, but Kayla's eyes never closed, her mind filled with fear. The hunters had passed once. What if they returned? Daniel sat near the door, his weapon resting across his knees. The firelight flickered on his face, showing lines of exhaustion, yet he did not look weak. His eyes stayed sharp, always scanning the shadows. Kayla studied him in silence, wondering again, why risk so much for us? Morning came slowly, the sun's light leaking through cracks in the wall. Daniel stood, stretching his stiff muscles. He looked at Kayla, who was still holding Lyra tightly. "You didn't sleep," he said quietly. Kayla narrowed her eyes. "Neither did you." Daniel gave a faint smile. "We'll rest when it's safe." They shared a simple breakfast from Daniel's bag. Lyra's face brightened as she ate, her little laughter breaking the tension. But Kayla could not relax, not fully. Every sound outside reminded her of the hunters. Every shadow looked like a threat waiting to strike. By midday, Daniel decided they needed supplies. "This place can be safe," he explained. "But without food and water, we won't survive long." Kayla's stomach tightened at his words. She hated to admit it, but he was right. The sisters had nothing without Daniel. They would have starved already. "I'll go out," Daniel said firmly. "You two stay here." Kayla stood quickly, shaking her head. "No. If you leave us, they'll find us," she argued. Daniel's eyes softened, but his voice stayed strong. "I won't let that happen. I'll be quick." Before Kayla could reply, a sudden noise shook the building. A crash followed by the echo of heavy boots. Lyra gasped and clung to her sister. Daniel moved instantly, his hand gripping his weapon. "They found us," he whispered. The door burst open, splinters flying across the floor. 3 hunters stepped inside, tall and cruel, their eyes glowing with malice. They carried jagged blades and strange weapons. Their laughter filled the room like poison. "Well, well," one sneered. 2 alien rats and their pet human." Kella's heart raced, her arms shielding Lyra. She thought Daniel would run, like everyone else had, but instead he stepped forward, placing himself between the sisters and the hunters. "Leave them," Daniel said coldly, his voice like steel. The hunters laughed louder, mocking him. A human protecting aliens? "What a joke," one spat. "Move aside or die with them." Daniel didn't move. His body stood firm, like a wall. The hunters attacked, rushing forward with blades raised. In an instant, Daniel's weapon roared. A blast of light filled the room. One hunter fell, his body crashing to the floor. The sisters screamed, clinging to each other. But Daniel's stance never faltered. The second hunter swung his blade. Daniel dodged and struck back, his movements sharp and practiced. Metal clashed against metal, sparks flying in the dim light. Kayla watched in shock. This man was not just strong, he was skilled. Every strike, every step, was full of purpose. He fought like someone who had faced death many times before. The third hunter circled toward the sisters, his eyes filled with hunger. Kayla's blood turned to ice. He was coming for Lyra. "Daniel!" she cried out. But Daniel was locked in combat with the second hunter. Kayla grabbed a broken piece of wood from the floor. Her hands shook, but she stood in front of her sister, ready to fight. The hunter laughed at her weakness, raising his weapon high. Before the strike could fall, Daniel spun. His weapon fired, the blast striking the hunter's chest. The alien fell, his scream cut short. Only silence followed, broken by Daniel's heavy breaths. The last hunter stumbled back, fear flashing in his eyes. He spat on the floor and fled into the streets, his footsteps fading into the distance. The room was filled with smoke and the smell of burning. Daniel lowered his weapon, his chest rising and falling. Kayla stood frozen, her hand still clutching the broken wood. Her eyes were wide, her body shaking. Lyra cried softly, burying her face in her sister's chest. Daniel looked at them, his voice steady but tired. "You're safe," he said simply. Kayla stared at him, unable to speak at first. This human had fought, bled for them. No one had ever done that. Not once in their lives. Finally, Kayla whispered, her voice trembling, "Why? Why would you do this for us?" Daniel's eyes softened, though his face remained hard. "Because someone has to," he answered. Kayla's throat tightened, her eyes burning with tears. She refused to let fall. For the first time she believed him, even if only a little. That night, the sisters sat close to the fire. Daniel sat nearby, cleaning his weapon in silence. The shadows outside were still dangerous, but inside, something had changed. Kayla looked at him, her suspicion weaker than before. Trust was still hard, still painful, but deep inside, she felt a new truth forming. This human was not just a stranger. He was their protector, and perhaps he was the first person they could ever trust. The fire crackled in the corner of the workshop, its glow chasing away the cold shadows. Kayla sat close to her sister, still holding her protectively, but her eyes kept drifting to Daniel. He sat on the floor, his back against the wall, cleaning his weapon in silence. The memory of the fight still burned in her mind, how he had stood between them and death. No one had ever done that for her or Lyra. No one. Lyra, though still shaken, seemed brighter. She looked at Daniel with wide eyes, full of curiosity instead of fear. "Daniel," she whispered softly, "you saved us." Daniel glanced up, his face calm but serious. "That's what I said I would do," he answered simply. To him, it was nothing unusual, but to the sisters, it was everything. For days they stayed hidden in the workshop. Daniel would leave at dawn, moving through the city's shadows. He always returned with food, water, or scraps of cloth. Kayla hated the long hours he was gone, but when he returned, her heart felt lighter. She never said it aloud, but she waited for him. Every single time, little by little, the workshop began to change. Kayla cleaned the dust and arranged the broken furniture. Lyra used old cloth to patch the holes in the blankets. They swept the floor, fixed what they could, and lit the fire each night. Slowly, it began to feel less like a ruin and more like a home. One evening, Daniel returned to find the fire burning and the air smelling of cooked food. Lyra had managed to make a small stew from the scraps he had brought. When she offered it shyly, he raised an eyebrow, surprised. "You cooked this?" he asked. She nodded quickly, her eyes shining. Daniel ate quietly, and when he finished, he gave a rare, small smile. "It's good," he said simply. Lyra's face lit up with joy, and Kayla felt a strange warmth stir in her chest. Day by day, the bond between them grew stronger. Daniel, though quiet, began teaching them small things: how to listen for danger, how to hide better, how to move silently through the city. Kayla absorbed every lesson, determined to protect her sister, if anything happened to him, but she also noticed the way his eyes softened when he looked at Lyra, as if he saw something worth fighting for, worth saving. At night, when Lyra slept, Kayla would sometimes sit across from Daniel by the fire. She would ask questions in a low voice, careful not to wake her sister. "Why do you care?" she asked one night, her voice sharp with doubt. Daniel stared into the fire for a long time before answering. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything," he said quietly. Kayla wanted to ask more, but the pain in his voice kept her silent. Despite the fragile peace inside their shelter, the world outside grew more dangerous. Rumors spread through the city about the human who sheltered alien outcasts. Some mocked him, others whispered threats. "The human protects the rats," they sneered. It was only a matter of time before trouble came knocking again. One afternoon, Kayla and Lyra followed Daniel to a hidden market where traders sold scraps. It was the first time the sisters had walked openly with him, but as soon as others saw them, laughter and scorn filled the air. "Look at him, keeping alien pets," one man spat. "They're not worth the food you waste on them," another sneered. Kayla's body stiffened, shame and anger burning inside her. Lyra clung to Daniel's arm, her eyes brimming with tears. Daniel did not react with anger. Instead, he turned to the men, his voice steady. "They are with me," he said firmly. His words carried power, silencing the crowd for a moment, but the whispers did not stop. The sisters knew the city would never accept them, and now Daniel was marked as an outcast too. That night, back at the workshop, Kayla could not stay silent. "You shouldn't have said that," she told him harshly. "You put yourself in danger for us. They will hate you too." Daniel looked at her calmly, his expression unreadable. "I don't care what they think," he replied. Kayla's breath caught in her throat. "Why? Why throw away your place for us?" she demanded. Daniel's eyes hardened, his voice sharp. "Because you are not less than them. Because you deserve to live." The words hit Kayla like a storm. For so long, she had believed she and her sister were worthless. Yet this human spoke as if their lives had meaning, as if they mattered. Her chest ached with emotions she could not name. She turned away, whispering, "You're a fool." But her voice cracked, betraying the tears she held back. Later, as Lyra slept peacefully, Kayla sat awake again. Her mind replayed Daniel's words, "You deserve to live." It was a simple truth, yet one no one had ever given her before. She looked across the fire at Daniel, who was already half asleep against the wall. For the first time, Kayla did not feel fear or suspicion when she looked at him. For the first time, she felt something new, a fragile bond beyond race, beyond pain, beyond the cruel world outside. But even as warmth grew inside the workshop, the city outside grew darker, and Kayla knew deep in her heart this fragile peace would not last forever. The workshop had become a fragile home. The fire burned each night, food was shared, and for the first time in their lives, Kayla and Lyra felt the warmth of belonging. But peace in a city like this never lasted long. The whispers about Daniel and the alien girls had grown louder. Soon, they became shouts. One morning, the sound of heavy boots shook the streets outside. Kayla rushed to the door, peering through a crack. Her heart froze. Dozens of people filled the street. Traders, hunters, guards, even neighbors, all glaring. At their workshop, at the front stood the city enforcers, armored and armed. Behind them, a crowd of angry faces shouted curses. "They're inside. The human hides them." A voice screamed. "They don't belong here," another shouted. "They'll bring nothing but ruin." Lyra clutched Kayla's arm, trembling. "What's happening?" She whispered. Kayla hugged her tightly, whispering, "Back, stay calm. I won't let them take you." But her voice shook because she wasn't sure she could keep that promise. Daniel stood in the center of the room, silent and calm. He looked at the sisters, then at the door. "They've come for you," he said quietly. Kayla's breath caught. "What will you do?" Daniel's eyes hardened, his hand gripping his weapon. "What I must," he replied. The door banged open, splintering under the force of the enforcers. The crowd surged forward, filling the workshop with noise and anger. The commander of the enforcers stepped inside, his voice booming. "Human, hand them over," he demanded. "You have no right to keep alien strays under your roof. They are property of the city, and you will suffer for hiding them," Lyra whimpered. Clinging tighter to her sister, Kayla stepped in front of her, ready to fight even with bare hands. Her eyes flashed with fury, but fear knotted her stomach. The commander sneered at her defiance. "Stand aside, girl, you are nothing," he spat. Before Kayla could speak, Daniel stepped forward, his voice cut through the noise like a blade. "They are mine now," he declared. The crowd fell silent for a moment, shocked by his words. Daniel continued, his eyes locked on the commander. "My family, my responsibility, no one touches them." A wave of laughter burst from the crowd, cruel and mocking. "Family? With aliens?" they jeered. "He's lost his mind. Better to kill them all than waste food on rats." The commander smirked, raising his hand to silence them. "You're a fool, human," he said. "These creatures are worthless, and you'll die for protecting them." Daniel's jaw tightened, his voice steady. "Then I'll die standing, not kneeling," he replied. The words carried weight, silencing even some of the crowd. Kayla's heart pounded, her eyes fixed on him. She had never heard anyone speak with such strength for her and Lyra. The commander stepped closer, his hand resting on his weapon. "Last chance," he warned. But before Daniel could respond, Kayla's voice rang out. "No," she shouted, her voice fierce. "If you want us, you'll have to go through me." The crowd gasped. Two fragile alien girls standing against an entire city. Lyra, though trembling, stepped beside her sister. Her small voice cracked, but she forced the words out. "And me. I won't leave him. I won't leave my sister." The crowd erupted with noise. Some jeered, some shouted angrily. But in the middle of the chaos, something shifted. A few faces in the crowd looked uncertain. For the first time, they saw not just aliens, not just outcasts, but two frightened girls standing bravely beside a human. It planted doubt, however small. The commander growled, drawing his blade. "Enough," he snarled. "This ends now." He lunged forward. But Daniel was faster. His weapon fired, the blast shaking the walls. The commander fell back, his blade clattering to the floor. The crowd screamed, some fleeing, others shouting. In rage, Daniel stood tall, his weapon smoking. His voice thundered over the noise. "They are under my protection. You will not take them, not while I live." For a heartbeat, silence filled the room. Kayla and Lyra clung to each other, their hearts racing. They had expected to be dragged away, beaten, or worse. But instead, they saw a human standing against a city for them. The enforcers hesitated, unsure whether to attack again. The crowd murmured, divided. Some shouted for blood, others for retreat. Daniel's eyes burned with defiance. He looked unshakable, unbreakable. And in that moment, Kayla felt something powerful stir inside her. Hope. The commander groaned on the floor, clutching his wound, his voice weak but full of rage. "This isn't over," he hissed. Daniel didn't flinch. "It's only beginning," he answered coldly. The enforcers dragged their commander back. The crowd scattered slowly, leaving. Behind silence and fear, Kayla sank to her knees, holding Lyra tightly. Her whole body trembled, but her heart burned with new fire. She looked up at Daniel, whispering, "You stood against all of them." "For us." Daniel lowered his weapon, his eyes tired but steady. "I told you," he said softly. "You are my family now." For Kayla, the words broke the walls around her heart. She finally believed him, fully, without doubt. Tears streamed down her face as she hugged Lyra tightly. They were no longer alone, not while this human stood with them, but in the distance. The echoes of the angry crowd still lingered. The city would not forget this, and Kayla knew the worst was yet to come. The workshop was quiet after the crowd left. The fire burned low, its weak light flickering against the walls. Kayla sat on the floor with Lyra in her arms, both sisters still trembling. Daniel leaned against the door, weapon in hand, his body stiff but unbroken. The air was heavy with smoke, fear, and something new, defiance. Kayla looked at him through teary eyes. "You fought all of them." "The guards, the crowd, everyone," she whispered. Daniel's face was calm, though his eyes carried exhaustion. "I told you," he said simply. "You are mine to protect now." Lyra raised her head, her small voice shaking. "But what if they come back?" Daniel knelt beside them, placing a hand gently on Lyra's shoulder. "Then we stand together," he said, his voice steady. "No one will take you while I still breathe." The sisters clung to him, and for the first time in their lives they felt what it meant to belong. Not as outcasts, not as prey, but as family. Days passed slowly after the confrontation. The city buzzed with rumors. Some called Daniel a madman, others called him dangerous. But whispers also spread of his courage. A lone human standing against the enforcers to protect two alien girls. Not everyone hated him for it. A few even began to respect him quietly from the shadows. Inside the workshop, life began to change. Kayla and Lyra worked hard to make it more like a home. They cleaned, patched holes, and even found old broken furniture in the ruins. Daniel repaired what he could, turning scraps into tools. Together, they built something new, something no one had ever given the sisters before. Stability. One evening, Kayla placed a small pot of stew on the table. The fire glowed warmly, casting light on the three of them. Daniel sat across from the sisters, his tired eyes softening as he watched them eat. "You've turned this place into something real," he said, almost surprised. Kayla raised an eyebrow. "We only did what we could." But inside, her heart warmed at his words. She had never felt pride before, not like this. Lyra leaned forward with a bright smile. "This is home now, isn't it?" she asked. Kayla hesitated, fear still clinging to her. But Daniel answered without pause. "Yes, this is home." The word carried weight for Kayla and Lyra. It was more than walls or a fire. It was safety, belonging, love, something they thought they would never have. But peace did not mean safety forever. One night, a soft knock came at the door. Kayla tensed, pulling Lyra behind her. Daniel raised his weapon, moving to the entrance. When he opened the door, he found a small figure waiting outside. It was an old alien man, his eyes tired but kind. "I saw what you did," the man said softly. "You stood against them for those girls. I have food and tools. Take them. The city may not care, but some of us see the truth." He handed Daniel a small bag, then vanished into the night before Daniel could answer. Daniel carried the bag inside, setting it on the table. Inside were fresh bread, vegetables, and even a warm cloth blanket. Kayla's eyes widened. "Why would he help us?" she whispered. Daniel shrugged. Because kindness spreads, once someone dares to show it. The sisters shared a look, realizing something. Daniel's courage had planted seeds in others too. Over the next weeks, small acts of kindness appeared. A bucket of clean water left outside, a basket of fruit hidden near their door. Not much, but enough to show they were no longer completely alone. One evening, as rain poured outside, the three of them sat around the fire, Lyra curled against. Daniel sighed, Kayla sitting close across from him. The storm outside could not touch the warmth inside. Kayla's voice broke the silence. "You've changed everything," she said softly. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "I only gave you a coat." Kayla shook her head, her eyes shining. "No. You gave us life again." Daniel looked into the fire, his face thoughtful. "And you gave me something too," he admitted. Kayla tilted her head, surprised. "What could we give you?" she asked. Daniel's voice was low, steady. "A reason to fight again." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Kayla's chest tightened, and she lowered her gaze. Her whole life had been pain and survival, but now, for the first time, she imagined a future, not just for her, but for Lyra, for all of them, together, that night. As the storm raged, the sisters whispered to each other before sleep. "Do you think he'll ever leave us?" Lyra asked softly. Kayla shook her head, her arms wrapping tightly around her. "No. He's our family now," she said firmly. And for once, she believed her own words. When morning came, the rain had washed the streets clean. The sun broke through the clouds, shining brightly over the broken city. Inside the workshop, the sisters and the humans shared bread and laughter, a fragile home built on trust, courage, and love. Kayla looked at Daniel, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "For the first time in my life, I don't feel afraid," she said. Daniel met her gaze, his eyes soft but firm. "That's how it should be," he replied. "And as long as I'm here, you'll never be alone again." The sisters smiled, tears of joy in their eyes. They had lost everything once, but now they had found something greater than they ever dreamed. A home, a family, and a human who had given them hope. And so, in the ruins of a cruel city, among shadows and hatred, a small fire burned brightly, the fire of two alien girls. And the human who called them his own. Their story was not the end, but the beginning of something greater, a future where even the forgotten could finally belong.